Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to do another small business vlog. I'm going to give you guys an update on what I've been doing, how's it been going, and where are we on the launch of the physical products. So we've been talking about the mistakes that I've made in my business that caused my business to fail, and I was working on fixing those mistakes. And so I have been working on that, and I'm making all the changes to my website and all those things. The last time that we spoke, I had a to-do list of things that I wanted to do. We made that together, if you remember that video, and this is the to-do list that I came up with. And so I have been working through all the things on this to-do list, and I have been able to check all of them off. So I worked on fixing the fonts on my cover photos and making them easier to read. So here, if you can see here was the old font. It was a fancy font, and I like the font, but it wasn't as easy to read. So I did change the fonts on all the products, and also increased the size of the actual product so that you would be able to see it easier. The old design just kind of it was just, you had to really zoom in to be able to see what the product was. And so I increased the actual main photo on that as well. So I did that for all the products. The number one was to increase the font, and then number two was to make the product images bigger. And so again, I had to do that for every single product. So that took a while. Number three was to change the taglines. So I basically had come up with a new marketing strategy based on a Bible study that I did, and we can talk about that later. I might be able to do a video on that, but basically I was asking the Lord about marketing and just how do I need to apply the things that I have looked at on YouTube about marketing to my particular business, right? I was having trouble being able to translate what they were saying to what I do. So I just kind of, took that to the Lord in prayer, and he gave me some scriptures, and I studied those scriptures and came up with a new marketing strategy, and then changed all the taglines according to that. And that's also how I also changed the website. We talked about that. You guys walked with me through that, changing the copy and everything on the website. And so I did that for the taglines, and then also did that for the product descriptions, changed all the product descriptions to be more cohesive with that marketing strategy that I came up with based on that Bible study as well. And then also the page copy. So I think I did a lot of that with you guys, where I did change, the way the website flowed. Instead of, I told you guys I had everything on the home page, and then I just kind of did change that to where it would be more of a user experience, where the user can kind of say, this is where I'm at in my journey, and this is and be taken to products that would be helpful for that section of their journey. And so I did all those things to kind of get prepared for the relaunch, to make sure that when the marketing efforts do begin to work and people are coming to the website, they aren't confused. They know exactly where to go to get what they need and that kind of thing. So this was our previous to-do list, and I was able to check all the things off of that list. So if you missed any of that series that I did about the mistakes that I made in my business and what I was doing to correct those mistakes, then be sure to go back and watch that. So I have done all those things. I've corrected everything. And so now we're ready to move forward. So the next thing that I wanted to do is I wanted to begin to think about, the product, right? What kind of product I wanted to release. And one of the things there were two things that came to my mind, right? Because like I told you guys, I've been wanting to do physical products for a long time. Remember, one of the things that we were talking about with fixing the mistakes is to make sure that the products represent the business owner, right? That they represent my personality, and that they really, it allows the customer to begin and kind of get a peek into who I am and what makes me tick and what is, important to me. And so that was part of an exercise that I did, me and God, just kind of saying, all right, what kinds of things can I use that are important to me, that I can use in a way to present my brand to the public, right? A prime example of that is Emily Cromwell. I don't know if you guys know her, but I watch her channel on YouTube and I love her products. I use many of her products. But one of the things that I really admire that she was able to do is She's an artist, right? And so what she was able to do is she was able to combine her love for art and drawing, also with her love for books, and create stationery products for book lovers. An artist, there's all kinds of avenues that you could use to get your art out there, but the way that she presented it in a way for stationery products, then you're taking something that people already use, and then combining that with what you love, right? And so you're able to meet people where they are and reach a larger and wider audience by combining your brand with something that they're already familiar with, right? They may not be familiar with you, or the fact that you're a book lover or any of those things, but everybody can appreciate a beautiful piece of stationery, right? So here is an example of how she does that very well. So here is one of her post-it notes, and it's her art, right? So these illustrations are her designs that she actually draws, every piece of them, but they're all book themed, right? So if you look at this one, it's also book themed, and then these two as well. So the point is that she found a way to take a product that everybody knows about, right? Everybody, can use the stationery. They use the Post-its and things like that. And you don't necessarily have to be a book lover to appreciate her stuff. I do not read physical books for the most part. Only physical books I really read are like if I'm looking through my own prophetic journals or my own Bible study notes pages and things like that. They're basically things that I've written. But for reading, I use audiobooks. I don't do physical books outside of, the Bible. So I don't really, I'm not a reader in terms of just fiction and things like that. In terms of physical books, I do audiobooks. And so for me, I wouldn't buy her products just because I'm a book lover, because I'm not a physical book person the way that her diehard customers are. However, I love stationery. I absolutely love stationery. And so I buy her products all the time because I use Post-it notes all the time, and I love to support small businesses. And so she gets me as a customer, because I adore her channel, but then also because I use stationery a lot. I am constantly going through stationery. So I said all that to say is that I wanted to find a way to do the same thing, right? To be able to combine my brand with something that a wider audience would use, but also something that is dear to me. Okay, so as I was thinking about that, I was thinking about two things. One thing is that I am a stationery lover. I love stationery even from when I was a kid. I don't know if you guys remember back in the day. This is going to date me, but back in the day when people used to write physical checks, right? Actual checks, they used to send checks in the mail, and they were like designed checks. Like, you could get, pretty flowers or, some kind of design on your checks. Like the normal checks would just come like boring and plain, but you could get these mail order checks where you could choose a design, and then they would send you checkbooks with these designs. And so we used to get those in the mail, and it was like Christmas. Anything that was like stationery that I could write on and that had pretty designs, I was in. And so I used to love those. And so anytime, we would like go to the store and I'd have my allowance, it was like, what was I buying? Journals, Post-it notes, fancy pens. That's always what I wanted to do. Okay. So then that was the first thing that I thought about. The other thing that I thought about, and even to this day, I'm always like that. Take me in a store and let them have some journals and them have some sparkle on them. I don't care if I've got 5 journals at the house that are blank and have not been used. I will buy it. So that's just how I am. I love to write. I love, journaling, and I love, any kind of stationery. The other thing was before, you guys know, I've talked about it on this channel before, that I used to attend a church. I ended up having to leave, and it was a whole thing. You can go back and watch my church abuse series for that. But anyway, while I was there, one of the things that we used to do way back in the day, this was so long ago, I think I was like still a teenager when we used to do this, but we used to create stationery products. So my mom and my aunt, they are like administrators. Like, they know how to design things, put things together. Like, they've both worked in office settings for a long time, and so they know how to do that kind of stuff. And so what we would do is they would have these women's conferences, and they would want to give out these, thank you goodie bags, to the conference goers, the people who pay their money to go to the conference or whatever. And of course, because I hate to say it, but a lot of churches are like broke, and they're operating on like no budget. We would make the products, and so it would be like workbooks and journals and booklets and little bookmarks and little flyers and little things in this like little baggie that each conference goer would get. But all of the items in there were items that we either purchased really cheap or we made. And so I remember that we would design these booklets, and they would be fully designed. They would be absolutely gorgeous. We would bind them and everything, print them out. It was a whole thing. And literally, when I think back to those things, we could have sold those for a lot of money. Like, they looked like you were getting like $100 goodie bag with all these materials in there, and it was things that we had made. And they were not just little things that we and because you got to remember, this was when I was a teenager. This was before Canva. This was before we were doing this stuff in Microsoft Word, so it was a lot of work. But we would just crank out this stuff that was just top quality, looked so fancy, looked so nice, and looked like it had been purchased. And so I remember us doing those things, and back then it was just that was just what we did. That's the kind of stuff that we did. We enjoyed it, and it wasn't a big deal. But now that I think back to it, I'm like, that's something that has been with me for my whole life. I've created my own products. Used to teach Sunday school, and I would create the Sunday school materials for the children. Back in the day, when I used to run youth ministry, I would create the products for the youth ministry, any kind of stationery paper products that we needed. And so this is something that I've done my whole life, and it's just something that to me, that's just how I am. That's the kind of stuff that I do. I enjoy doing it. And so I haven't really thought, okay, this is something that I should probably combine in my business, because this is something that I do anyway. And so I talk about that a little bit in my Finding Your Purpose course, is that a lot of times when you are trying to discover your purpose and what God has created you to do, it's very hard to recognize it, because it's something that comes so easy to you. You don't really see it as something that has value. And so that's I had to go back to that course and kind of reteach my own self and say, what kind of things do I do that are important to me, that I could combine to make a physical product that really represents me, right? Because, I could, pick any kind of physical product, right? But I didn't want to pick something that didn't illustrate who I am as a person and wasn't something that I would use on a regular basis, right? Because that's important. So I just kind of started to brainstorm products, and I thought, okay, I'm definitely going to have to do some kind of stationery product, because that is just, what's important to me. The other thing too is that a lot of the courses that I have, they come with workbooks. And so obviously I would want to create some kind of a workbook that would go with the stationery products that I want to create. So this is an idea that I had previously, not for the stationery products, but just for the workbooks. And it always ended up flopping. It ended up flopping, and it flopped for multiple reasons. One, I tried to do one, and here, I'll show you guys. Okay, so you guys know that we talked about all the rejects and things, but this is another batch of rejects, things that caused my business to fail. So when I was looking into doing physical products the first time, here's two options that I had that flopped. Okay, option number one. So very pretty. However, you can see this. See that stuff on there? That was some jewels that I had put on there that fell off. So obviously couldn't sell that. And then also, the binder was like, I wanted it to be like acrylic, but I wanted it to be full size. And you can find acrylic binders, but to find the ones that are like 8.5 by 11 is hard to find. So this was kind of like my version of acrylic, but you can see it's like flimsy. It's not at all the aesthetic that I would be looking for. And then also, in order to get this pretty gold color that you're seeing, this is what the inside looks like. So I literally had to glue these on. And so the prototype just was like, okay, where am I going to be able to get this made at? And it just, you know, it's still an idea that I have in my mind, but it's just not feasible as a first product, because it's like, where are you going to get this made from? Okay, so here was the next option. The next option was to do something like this. So this was just spiral bound. However, even though I like this one, it was the back. This is one of the products that I have in my store. You can see like the inside is full color, but the main concern that I had with that one was, again, it didn't match the aesthetic that I'm going for, right? My brand is just, I want it to be very luxurious and very, you know, I want the brand to feel like when women of faith purchase it, that they are treating themselves, right? That it's a luxury item, that this is something that I'm doing just for me, and, you know, that kind of thing. And so that just was not going to go with my aesthetic. I didn't like the binder, the spirals. I thought they were, you know, cheap looking. And most importantly, though, it was the cost, because to get just one of those made was like $12. And then on top of that, it took 3 weeks to get to me. And so I was like, okay, that's not going to work for my brand either, because I don't, you know, $12 for one book, if that's the cost I pay, then obviously that's going to be, you know, be too much for my customer for me to be able to make a profit and get it shipped to them and those kinds of things. So the cost was a problem, and then also the quality was a problem. And so, you know, this is not, like I said, this is not my first rodeo. I have done this before, of trying to get physical products made. And so I kind of came to the conclusion that I need to make them myself. And so therein lies the next piece that I have to work on, is getting all of the materials needed to be able to produce these myself. And so the first order of business was, I needed a printer. I had a printer, but it was like an old cheap like Canon printer, and the ink was just ridiculous on that printer. A new cartridge of ink was like $20, and that was just for black, not including color. So if you want to get black and color, it was like $25. I mean, it was like $50. And you would maybe on a good day get 50 pages if you just did black and white. If you were trying to do something full color, which is what I'm trying to do, you might get like 12 pages, and that's it. So if you mess up on a couple pages or whatever, like there was no way I would be able to get a full workbook made, you know, even with one whole, you know, thing of ink. And then additionally, the printing was very slow, right? So if I wanted to print a book and I had 10 orders, it would take me, you know, hours to just get those 10 printed. And then on top of that, it also did not do front and back printing. So these are kinds of things where the kind of printer that I had was just not going to work. So then I started to research, all right, so obviously I would love to get the EcoTank, but I don't have the money for the EcoTank. And so I researched an older version of that's still from Epson, but that, you know, can meet my needs for now, that will give me a good print quality, that will give me you know, long lasting ink, that will give me front and back printing, you know, quick printing, those kinds of things. And so I did find a printer that I had to order on a website called OfferUp that I use. I actually got my laptop from that place as well. It's basically it's affiliated with eBay. And it's basically just local, and so you can find local people that are selling things that are used. And so I was able to find someone local that was selling a printer that was basically brand new, and it actually already had ink in it, which was also a plus. So I was able to check that off. And so the next thing was to begin to create the products in terms of, what kind of products do I want to make? What kind of design am I looking to have? Those kinds of things. So come along with me on this journey and join me the next video as we are going to discuss the next thing that I had to do in order to begin to move towards these physical products. I really appreciate you guys watching all of my videos. I really want to say thank you to everyone that's here, also to those who have commented. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please let's chat in the comments. If you have anything you want to chat about, I'd love to hear from you. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss the next video. Next time we are going to talk about my proof of concept, and it was a disaster. Stay tuned. Thank you guys so much for watching. God bless you on your journey to freedom. I am Amanda Nicole, and I am the CEO of Freedom Through Divorce. And so I create personal development courses and ebooks and all kinds of things that are geared towards women of God who have been through divorce, who are considering divorce, and who want to move towards freedom and finding their purpose in God. So what is Freedom Through Divorce? Well, Freedom Through Divorce is actually an online school full of personal development courses for women of God who have been through divorce or who are considering divorce. Anyone who has had to deal with divorce understands that it is extremely difficult. There are so many balls that you have to juggle. Will the children be okay? Is this something that God is going to be okay with? How does it affect my relationship with God? How am I going to learn how to be independent as a new single person or a new single mom? There's so many things you have to consider. And as a Christian, there are just so few resources out there to help you understand how to navigate those things. So this is a school that really goes from considering divorce and understanding God's views on divorce, when it's acceptable, when it's not acceptable, and understanding that there are so many more cases where God sees divorce as acceptable than what is normally taught out there. And it does it in a way that is not condescending, that's not judgmental, that is just giving you the information from God's heart. And most importantly, is from someone that's been through what you're going through. It's not just theology. It's not just I read this or I heard this, but it's someone that's actually walked through it. So the personal development courses are meant to help you move and experience freedom through divorce, because there's so many people who they get a divorce, but they don't thrive afterwards. They stay stuck. They stay bitter. They stay telling anyone that'll listen how terrible their ex is. And that's not God's plan for you. God wants you to be able to move towards the purpose and plan that He has for your life and to thrive so that the chapter of your life post-divorce is better. That's what the word says. It says your latter days shall be greater than the former days. So that's what Freedom Through Divorce is all about. It's personal development courses that you can take the information from a biblical perspective and experiencing God's freedom, His prosperity, His love, His joy, His peace, all of the fruits of the Spirit and the blessings that He sent His Son to die for you to be able to have. Just because you've had to go through a divorce does not mean that you are negated from the promises that God has for you. So that's what Freedom Through Divorce is. If you're interested in learning more, visit our school today.